to be a good shamanic practitioner, you have to be able to channel the power of the helping spirits in order to be able to work. There are lots of ways of entering into an altered state of awareness. In Buddhism, you work with meditation. Buddhism, for me, is really a philosophy of the mind. It's a science of the mind. And in order to be able to understand the mind, you have to get the mind to settle.
There is this beauty about nature that when someone is prepared, knowledge comes in their way. Once I started experiencing like what this is, I'm like, wow, this is fundamental truths about the origin. It's about like how everything is built. And this is not something to joke around. This needs utmost respect because it's nature opening up and showing you its deepest secrets. So maybe we should start from who you are, Isa. So who is Isa?
Well, I've been trying to figure that out for a while. I think we could best characterize me as a spiritual seeker, and someone who's deeply, deeply interested in the unseen and trying to understand all of the different ways of knowing that which lies beyond the conscious mind, and trying to understand all the different pathways that can lead you to deeper understanding of spirit.
Wow. Do you want to start from one of your early memories in life? Where would you say your life sort of started?
Well, I have a lot of memories of being in utero, but in terms of life here on the planet, I think some of my earliest memories are from conversing with trees. Basically, I lived. I moved to Hawaii when I was very young, like at age 3, and the plants there are, really in your face. It's not like you can just see, oh, there's a tree or there's a flower. Like there's a tree, there's a flower, there's a tree, there's a flower. And I was just completely kind of taken in by the plants, and I spent a lot of time alone in nature when I was quite young, and I was also, in terms of my formal education in shamanic practice began very, very early. I mean, I think the trees really introduced me to it, but I was also put in a hula school at the age of 3, and at the time, the hula that was being danced was, lovely hula hands and cockeyed mare from Kona Kakai, these kind of tourist-pleasing dances. And I was really, really interested in the older dances that we also danced, which were, much more drum-based. And there was an older woman in the school who kind of took me under her wing. And so I kind of got out of having to do the lovely hula hands thing so much. And it was enthralling for me to be able to do the dances, like, with the fish, you're swimming with the fish, or, you're calling the wind, or, you're with the stars, or there's this beautiful embrace of nature. So it was thrilling for me to be able to be with nature in that way. And I found that reality, and that the dance opened and the nature opened, was much more resonant with me than like regular human interactions. I actually grew up in a pretty violent and dysfunctional family, and so anything I could do to not be there was good. And so, I mean, I really felt like I was raised and by the plants and by nature. And when we moved from Hawaii, it was very hard for me. And we moved to northern Mexico, Chihuahua, and we stayed in Texas for part of the year, in El Paso for part of the year, and then I was on school vacations. I was sent to this ranch in northern Mexico that was owned by my family with another Mexican family, and so I was left in the care of the native people there, who were the Huichol Indians, and Huichol people, and they were the ranch hands, and they were my babysitters, and they were really nice to me, and they, taught me how to ride horses. They'd throw me on a horse and hit the back of the horse. It was like, oh my God, I gotta learn this. They taught me a lot about how to track animal tracks, and, just really, so I was, and their worldview is really different from the sort of more mainstream Mexican worldview, and definitely different from the mainstream Anglo worldview. And so that was really wonderful. And they were very, very much in tune with nature. And it was wonderful being with other people who were that in tune with nature. And so, it goes on from there.
I have a few questions so from my experience right now, I kind of understand dance, for example, or music has the ability to connect to the divine. And it came to me as a surprise, because usually people enjoy music and they feel like, okay, music is a way to calm down or enjoy a song. But certain music, when put with intention and emotion, can sometimes connect to certain energies, and you would feel it wow, this is going somewhere that I didn't expect. Is that the kind of dances that they used to do back in Hawaii?
Well, I mean, they weren't taught like that. They were, you were taught, this is what you do with your feet and this is what you do with your hands. They weren't taught in that context, but they definitely, I definitely had that experience of being, more pressed into the bosom of nature, if you will. But, it's interesting you're talking about music in that way, because the first music that I really understood was acting in that way was actually ragas. And I was so excited to learn. It was the most exciting thing to learn that there was a raga for each time of day. Mm-hmm. And so when I learned that when I was in Saudi Arabia. I moved to Saudi Arabia after we moved from Mexico, and there was a large foreign community there, and there was a group of Indian engineers that were there. It was a very small expat community, and they had records of the ragas, and I was like, what is this? Even before I understood that there were ragas for dawn, ragas for early morning, ragas for I was just so enchanted with this. And then, they told me about this tradition, and so I spent a lot of time listening to the ragas at the different times of day, and really, feeling the way that they kind of sync you up with the ambience of the moment of the day.
And I'm realizing all these things can be considered as a technology, which people kind of don't see. There is a lot of things that people oversimplify, but it's only later I'm understanding, wow, this is a sort of technology which has a lot of different applications, like ragas. It's very beautiful for the ears, but if the person who's listening know how to use it, it connects to different things. Mm-hmm. I would like to ask you, what age did you move? So I would like to track a timeline. So you were in Mexico. What age was that? And how did you move to Saudi Arabia?
So I was in Hawaii until I was almost 9, and then we moved to Mexico, and I was there until I was about 11, and then we moved to Saudi Arabia, and then I was there, and I was actually when I was there for a while, but there was a problem in that girls were not allowed to be educated past the age of 12. So at that point, I was sent to Lebanon, to Beirut in Lebanon, and I went to boarding school there. And I stayed there till I was in my early teens. And then I came back to the States, actually, and lived in the States in New Jersey, which was a cultural shock. And then, and then I moved to France for
Sure. But I would like to know, like, what led you to move? Was your parents working and were they taking you with them? Was it like that?
It was like that, yeah. I mean, I thought I didn't really know my father that well. I mean, I rarely saw him, but it turns out there was a good reason for that. I'll tell you that in a minute. But I thought he was selling refrigeration systems because he worked for a company called Amana, which was actually a front for what his real job was, which was working with the CIA. And I didn't find out that he was working with the CIA until after he died. I had no idea.
No.
So I thought we were just selling. Amana I knew as a refrigerator company. So I thought he was selling refrigerators or something. I didn't really know. He never really told me. I never really asked him. I never really talked to him, so, so that was what was happening. So he was going to interesting places, meeting interesting people, and goodness knows.
And how did you as a child kind of see all this? Like, so you had like this very striking memory, like you started from talking to plants. So I from someone who's listening, I would say, like, so you already had a feeling for the planet and things around, because usually people get immediately absorbed by the external world. I mean, plants are part of it, but still, you forget where you are coming from and all this energies around. It's easy to be grabbed and like move on to worldly desires. So how were you as a kid, and what were you thinking at that time as you were moving through different places?
Well, I was really, really interested in all the different new cultures. Like I learned Arabic. We lived out in the desert. It's a whole world to describe that to you. But the Bedouins would come by with their goats, and I would always come up with an excuse to be out in the desert outside the walls of the house, when they went by, so I could practice my Arabic. And, they taught me things. So I was really interested in different cultures, new cultures. I was really interested in the goats. I really loved animals. And, but, the thing for me was that I didn't feel that connected to like Anglo culture or and certainly not the culture of my family. And I think I had a really big shift in understanding. In it seemed like with humans, things were always difficult, things were unhappy, people were not at peace, and in nature, everything was at peace. So I was walking around with this question, how do we bring the peace of nature into the realm of humans? And then the question became, is there a culture that is aligned with this peace and is already found a way to integrate this? And of course, the Huichol people went a long way with that. And once I became able to choose, what I could study, I began studying cultural anthropology and linguistic anthropology. I really love languages. I just love learning languages. And so So I decided, I'm going to study cultural anthropology because I'm going to find a culture that has this piece of nature integrated into it. And I found the Hopi tradition very close, very close by geographically to the Huichol tradition. And, but I never really found a culture that had really done it, like really embodied that piece and that I could understand in any way. So I thought, well, maybe it's a religion, So I started studying comparative religion. That's when I went to Institut Catholique in Paris, and and it was there where actually it was so interesting because that was a continuing education program that I was part of. That were all the missionaries in the different colonies of the ancient or former colonies of France were coming for, sort of refreshing their education. And then they would go back to their posts. So I got to know these really interesting people, and they would tell me about the cultures that they were living in. And that became really interesting to me. And I started studying shamanism at that point because I was like, okay, this is where we're getting, this is what this is, and I was really interested in art and in particular doing pit firing with pottery. And so I and of course that pit firing and pottery making is something you find in wall traditional cultures. And so I was studying with the different potters from these cultures, and they would introduce me to the shamanic practitioners, or they themselves might be shamanic practitioners. And so I felt like within shamanism we had, which is a practice that you find in every indigenous culture, where the practices they look a little bit different on the surface, but the interior experience of them is very similar. And so, and the types of healing processes are quite similar as well. I mean, you see, I studied with Nepali shaman doing soul retrievals, and I've studied with Pueblo people, doing power retrievals. They're very, very similar. And so I was like very heartened by this. And of course, there's a lot of shamanic practice that is not light filled, and but I wasn't interested in that. I stayed away from all of that. And then I formalized my shamanic education beyond cultural anthropology academically in working with different shamans and different traditions. And I did work with Michael Harner for a while. I worked as a medium for him. And that was another aspect of my experience that really made me feel different from other people was, and I didn't know what it was at the time, but I would have what was basically visions of, I'd be, sitting there, and then all of a sudden everything would slow down, and then I would be aware of the presence of something else than what was happening here. And it took me a long time to realize that I was, I didn't know what this was. And when I was in Paris, there was a lot of interest at the Institut Catholique and the Theosophists. And there's Madame Blavatsky, and there's Alice Bailey, and, there's, these various mediums or channels that were bringing forward with, the teachings of the masters is what they would call them. And I was like, okay, this is what this is. Okay. So then I recognized that I was actually a natural medium, and that took a lot of understanding for me to get to. I mean, very easy to step into the mediumship place, but very hard to know exactly what place that had in ordinary culture. But within shamanic practice, that's a given. To be a good shamanic practitioner, you have to be able to channel the power of the helping spirits in order to be able to work. So I felt like I was, a pig in mud, like I had come home, finally I don't feel completely, non-resonant with what's going on around me, like it's just like I stepped into it and felt myself there, and, within human experience, at home for the first time.
Yeah, like I'm very interested in a few things, and especially about something that I've been observing quite lately, that sometimes your body is a place where different energies communicate with each other. Like for example, you go for this planned ceremony, and sometimes it is not you talking to the plant. The plant is also in seeking for knowledge. It is something else coming in, and it could be like a consciousness of the planet itself that comes through you and talks to the plant and gives the answer the plant is seeking. And I've been observing it quite some time. And that's one of the reasons I went to study tantric traditions in India. And I understood all these mantras that they have, in a way, is a way to connect to the frequency of the specific energies. So the energies come and stay in you as long as you are a good medium. You have cleaned your body, you purified things, you don't have a lot of baggages holding you from inside. Then they like to come to your body, and sometimes since they come to your body, you also learn.
Right.
So it's a very beautiful experience. As a young person, I never understood when people say like I can channel energies and stuff. It's only like over time I'm like, wow, this is very beautiful in a way that there is this universal entities that exist everywhere, sometimes passes through your body, and you're very sensitive enough to catch it. And then you make sense of it. What age were you when you were experiencing these things?
Well, from a very young age, like when I told you about the trees, like it never occurred to me to talk to anyone about the fact that the trees were talking to me, because nobody else is talking about that. And
No.
Another thing that happened at Hawaii that I didn't mention was that I had, in school, I was the only white child in the school where I went. And most of the children were like Hawaiian Chinese or Hawaiian Japanese or Hawaiian Filipino. I had a lot of friends that were Hawaiian Japanese or Japanese Hawaiian, and they were Buddhists. And one of my friends invited me to go to their services one day, and I was like so excited, because, here's these beautiful, it was, Japanese tradition, the tatami mats, and then, this beautiful incense, like just like heavenly incense. And then these large statues of Buddha. And then they had the gongs, that you're talking about. The gongs were like, oh my gosh, like I was just so compelled, So I would always kind of show up at their house, just before they were going to to their services, trying to get myself invited. And so as soon as I could start studying Buddhism more formally, I did. And I started actually with the Japanese, because it was through the Japanese that I had the exposure. So I spent quite a bit of time with Zen. And Zen is amazing. I mean, there's a lot of wonderful, marvelous things in the Zen tradition, and the gongs are a big thing for me, but there's not enough gongs. And in Tibetan Buddhism, you've got a lot of sound, you've got a lot of drums, you've got a lot of cymbals, you've got all of this sound. And, you're talking about the mantras tuning me to the fields. Like I really felt like all of that sound and color was just so compelling. And so I really kind of came into my own, like, again, feeling finally inside home with Tibetan Buddhism. And I had some wonderful, wonderful teachers that I had the great good fortune to study with. And um, that, and that, really what you're talking about in terms of the tantric practices, taking you further in, using, the tantric practices use that sound, to take you further in. And that, and of course, there's this big resonance with, of course, Buddhism arises out of Vedic culture in India, and so there's the richness of Indian philosophy that informs, a lot of Buddhist practices. And you find within tantric practices, you find that interchange between yogic practices and Vedic practices more strong, and so yeah. So I think I was, again, very young. I was like 5 or 6, I first started studying or knowing about Buddhism. And then as a younger teenager, I started studying and read about Suzuki. And then I studied at Zen Center, San Francisco. And I'm awesome there, and had the good fortune of face and with Chinese and Tibetan teachers, teaching in the ground. Yes, it's going.
One thing I kind of realize more and more is that you take the momentum from different lives and move forward. So, for example, someone would be extremely curious about the world, and they really want to learn about everything. They're like, but the time is limited. So, and life comes to everyone with responsibilities and things to do, but you still really want to learn. And then you are given a chance to learn only about religion, and you're born in a very specific place, and life takes you everywhere to learn about everything. So I feel like, and this is also something I see in external world where people become extremely successful in certain things. And I feel like, and this is something I understood, and it's just a personal view, that it comes from the momentum of different lifetimes. So the more you move with the intention of getting something, sometimes it takes many lifetimes, but then you prime yourself into all the exact right opportunity that you need to hit to get that thing. And it's also wonderful to see why people's lives is so different. We were born in a certain place and you started immediately kind of starting to understand what is around. You would like to learn about religion, and you systematically progressed to a place where you make sense of it. I would like to come back to the timeline. So you were in France, I'm thinking, and you kind of understand from other masters around you that, wow, I can channel energies, and this is how they talk through me. What happened after that, and what was the age at that time? Were you a teenager? Were you a young woman? What was the age, and what happened next?
Well, I was about 19 at that time, but I had been doing something I didn't understand, which they explained, that became clear to me through the Theosophists. I had been doing something called automatic writing, which I didn't know what it was called. But I would wake up in the middle of the night, and then I'd be just write and write and write, and this very definite ancient Chinese script. I mean, they had repeating characters, and it was all Chinese characters, and then and that would happen, and then it's I and then other forms of automatic writing that happen, and then I started just realizing, I just started getting a lot of information about people, and so I really was trying to figure out how to apply this, once I understood what it was, and then I was a medium, and well, where do you find, what do you do? How do you work as a medium in the world, And when I started studying shamanism, I saw that this is a given, that you need to be a medium, or it's no big deal, if you're not a medium, then you're not, you can't really do the work, So when I was able to work as, in my 20s, I was able to work with Michael Harner as a medium, and then I learned a lot more formally about how, the different kinds of things that can be channeled, the different types of spirits that can be channeled, and the different reasons for doing that, and that was super helpful. And then I I started practicing shamanic work, and I also was really interested in altered states of awareness in general. And
No.
I did have friends who were in the Native American church in the 70s, and they would invite me to the ceremonies with peyote, and that brought me a certain level of realization. And then by the time I was in my, I had children, and I worked as a professional language interpreter. There was this other thing happening at the same time.
Got a little more.
And so I did that professionally. And then I actually, I was running a translation company. I was working as an individual translator, but then I started working with this other guy with this translation company, and that was right before the .com, and it was right before internationalization really took hold in the States, and we just were so busy, and we had like 1,000 different. This is before computers, right? So, and like I remember the first computer that we had was a Mac Plus that you would put in a disk to boot it, and then you'd have a disk to write on, like that was the big innovation of it, which was like amazing. But, so we were making quite a bit of money, and my children were young. I was really busy with the company because it was growing so fast. And I kind of crashed a little bit and got an autoimmune disease. And that made me pull back. And I realized I needed to do something, different, and rather than try to have to be on these meds for the rest of my life. And so I started working with the energy medicine things that I had learned, through the Theosophists, and working with meditation again. And then I went into hypnotherapy, and I decided that, I really just want to be working in multi states, my whole life. Even as an interpreter, I mean, you probably know this as well. Like it was a translator. Like for me, translating before it became this, thing that you do with machines, it was an art, And when I would translate, I could feel a teacher or a guy helping me translate. Like the presence was there, and it was so compelling and thrilling. And you are, as an interpreter, and I'm sure you know this from speaking all the languages you speak, you are becoming a medium, right? You are acting as a bridge between two different verbal realities. And when you're working as a medium, you're just working as a bridge between the nonverbal reality and the verbal reality. I had no idea I was being trained as an interpreter to perfect high mediumship, right? So when I started working in hypnotherapy to cure I was hoping it's going to be able to cure my autoimmune disease, and I was able to do that. I decided that, okay, the translation business is getting really uninteresting with all of these machines. And I'm just not interested. Don't care about these machines. There's no wonder in art. I don't want to be just here, editing what a machine spits out, like not interested. So I sold my interest in the company and went back to school to get my PhD in transpersonal psychology, and at the same time got a certificate in hypnotherapy. And when I started working with people as a hypnotherapist, helping them move into an altered state of awareness to understand, and be able to access parts of themselves that were driving the symptoms that they were dealing with, I realized that simple hypnotherapy was not going to be enough for most people. And so I had been studying, of course, I'd been studying shamanism. I understood, power retrieval, soul part exchange, extractions, lineage line clearings, like there was all these things that I had learned. And in Buddhism, of course, I had, I've been practicing Buddhist since I was 16, every day meditating. So I really, had a deep understanding, or probably not deep enough, but a deep understanding about the nature of suffering, that, it's what you're attached to, it's what you're avoiding, and it's what we have misunderstandings about that's making you unhappy, So all of that started dialing in as I was doing suggestion hypnosis with people. And then pretty soon, depth hypnosis started emerging, this spiritual counseling model that I developed and articulated over a period of years. And that combines the energy medicine, the shamanism, the Buddhism, hypnotherapy, the transpersonal psychology, and with all of that, all of the power of these different ways of knowing, we're able to really go quite deeply into the roots of people's symptoms and work with regression therapy and exposure therapy to change people's relationship to the issues at hand. And so for me, working in this way, I feel at home doing that. Like I feel more at home working in this way, being able to actually be with people in that deeper place and having a way to do that, and being able to offer an alternative to people suffering is like just the most wonderful thing to me. And so, everybody says, "Oh, you work so much." I feel like I don't work at all. I feel like I'm doing just what I want to do. I'm not that interested in going out for fine dining and like that's not that interesting. I mean, okay, it was a nice meal, but I'm really interested in like, what's driving this and what's behind this and what's informing this, and how do we understand how to change, and what do we need to know about ourselves in order to become more of who we are. Like those things are interesting to me, and of course I always love to sit down to a nice meal with someone, but it's not, like some people are foodies or something like that. It's not, I mean, I'm happy for them, but I'm not that, so I feel like I really kind of came into my own, beginning to do that kind of work professionally. But the problem was that I was working all the time. I was working 6 days a week, most of the day, from like 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. And I wasn't able to see all the people who were interested in seeing me. So I realized I had to start teaching if we were going to have everyone. I had to teach other people if we were going to have everyone who wanted this help receive it. So that's when I started teaching. And that's when I had to begin to articulate so that I could pass it on. And that took a long time. And, first it was the depth hypnosis that I taught. And then it was the shamanism that I taught when I realized that people needed to understand the energetics. And then when they weren't getting the energetics, I had to teach them energy medicine. And then like there was this whole, the whole Buddhist framework of understanding the evolution of consciousness.
Right.
And that needed to be part of the therapeutic process. So I had to start teaching that. And so, and then of course we had to have a seat for that and in Western thought. And when I started doing this 30 years ago, nobody else was doing this. Now, all of a sudden, everybody's doing Buddhism, shamanism, 99 cents. You got like, if, at the time, it was heresy, to bring shamanic journey into a therapeutic setting. It was, and you had to like pretend that you were doing therapeutic touch when you were doing energy medicine. If you were to go to a hospital and work at a program to help people with their healing, it was really, really different. And you could not give anyone an herb to help clear whatever they were dealing with, or you could get in real big trouble. And I had huge interest, of course, in plants, and I had a certificate in biology that I'd gotten from a Canadian school because you couldn't study it in the States. So things have changed so much in the current time, and it's wonderful. And I think a big part of it, as you were talking about, is driven by the interest in plant medicine. And I think it's very interesting that this vine from the Amazon is making its way throughout the world. And it is opening people to these realms that I was always kind of tuned into, but took me a long time to understand what they were. But what's happening is that there is this, the problem that I see is that there's not enough integration. There's not enough depth of understanding of what the plants are showing. There's, people go, I go and I do, ayahuasca over here, and then I lead my life over here. There's a real need to bring the integration of these deeper understandings into everyday life, so that people feel more whole and more integrated and more able to move toward what is most important to them, and to be able to have the courage to step into a new way of being, and to bring what is, the thing that inspires them most into the world for the benefit of other people. It takes integration. And a concern that I have right now is that, they're real, like, I look around me and I'm like, we were doing somatic work before the word somatic existed in depth hypnosis. And now everything is somatic, and nobody knows what it means. Actually, they don't know how to actually begin to listen to the wisdom of the divine, and how to get there. They just, just say, what does your body feel? And that's somatic, like, I'm concerned about that, and I'm not being judgmental in any way, but, when you're working with these deeper truths, these deeper, like, mysteries, there's like it's really important to approach it with respect, and not with this kind of consumer, gimme, what can it do for me? Kind of, and so that's what I want to advocate for, is to have this, like, deeper, like, even if you can't feel or see or know the deeper wisdom that's informing what the plants are showing, at least you know that there's something deeper there, and that it's your task to do whatever you need to do to be able to clear the obscurations. This is where Buddhism comes in. Clear the karmic patterns. Do the soul retrievals and the power retrievals that you need to do from shamanic work, so that you can hold the wisdom that the plant is showing, and so that you can transform deeply and become the person you truly are, and that the plant will show you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wanted to point out a few things. So, because otherwise we'll be missing, so I wrote it down. One thing I was thinking about is that there is this beauty about nature, that when someone is prepared, knowledge comes in their way. And I keep seeing, like, for example, I was trying to talk to people about things. Like, I'm like, wow, guys, there is all these things beyond this existence. And it's so beautiful and it's so vast. And the simplest thing you can do is to do the best of your knowledge and never lose touch with your morality. So I keep telling them this, but they are not in a place of knowledge to really understand. Because when they are in the right time of right level of understanding, nature itself will open up and shows them, and the thought patterns will change, their habits will change. So it's a beautiful thing. Like, nature always prioritizes the most deserving based on what they have done. It's very ruthless in a way that there is no soft touch, because when it comes to deeper things, like nature and its primal knowledge, it wants to give to those people who are ready, who are willing to protect it and willing to, like, really stand with that kind of truth. So I would say, like, it's impossible to teach someone, but sometimes people come because they are prepared. So then it's a, were you going to say something? So,
Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
so sometimes you find the right teacher and then you are given the right knowledge and you kind of like make sense of it from your point of view and then you are ready. I was saying like it's impossible to go to someone and tell that this exists. They would not understand. And I've been thinking about like the commercialization of ayahuasca because I've seen different shamans who lost their path. Um, because when I had it for the first time, I never understood what it is because my thinking was very much encapsulated into my body, like me and the world, never like the world, and I am just the world itself. So once I started experiencing like what this is, I'm like, wow, this is fundamental truths about the origin. It's about like how everything is built. Um, and this is not something to joke around. This is not something, this needs utmost respect because it's nature opening up and showing you its deepest secrets. Um, and I feel like when people lose touch with it, then they are on a path that they cannot sometimes come back. I have seen shamans who kind of like get really into the money part of things, and the deities, the goddesses that used to come to visit them stop coming because they are not aligned to what they want. They want purity. They need absolute respect. So if you are going to take a diet, you need to take it really, really well. No half-done diets. And when you interact with people, you need to always interact with certain level of respect. Even if you know all the knowledge, you still have to interact from a very humble point of view. So it's a like even for me, I feel like wow, this is just and the thing that it does to me is that it gives so much hope that it gives me like wow, there is not this specific way of living like making money, fancy dinners, getting a job, buying things. I'm like, there is. It's just just a break in between, like a big long journey. And if you could see it over, then you can see the whole path ahead. I would like to deep down and deep dive into a few things you mentioned. One is altered states. So, what do you mean by altered states? And also, I would like you to add, if you could, like you talked about different energies and how to call them, right, at the right times. Would be nice if you could add a bit of essence into that.
Sure. I just want to respond to one thing you were saying, in terms of people being ready on the path or ready to receive the knowledge. One thing, the reason that I really like starting with something like hypnotherapy is because it's sort of at the edge of clinical practice where people come for help. Like a lot of people will turn to hypnotherapy after maybe talk therapy didn't work for them or there's nothing within the Western medical paradigm that helps them understand what's happened to them with plants or with other anomalous experiences. And so they'll come to hypnotherapy, and that moment of openness that people have as they're trying to understand what's troubling them, that is the moment that is the teaching moment, and that, so I feel I rejoice at being at that place where people will come to me for help in trying to understand their experience and integrate their experience. And that's why I've created all of these different training programs. I train people how to be, a straight ahead hypnotherapist in the spiritual counseling practice of depth hypnosis. I train people how to be depth hypnosis practitioners, which helps them integrate shamanism and Buddhism more fully into their practice. I teach people how to be applied shamanic practitioners so that they can work with traditional methods of shamanic healing and bring it forward into the modern context in an integrated way. And then I have a program in integrated plant medicine insight integration to help people learn how to help other people work with the insights of the plants that they've received. And then I have that very important certificate program in something called Coming to Peace, which is a conflict resolution process that I've articulated that draws from Buddhist principles and shamanic principles of peacemaking. And, that's a certificate that you can, with these methods of coming to peace, you can help bring that peace. For me, that was the big question when I was little. How do I bring the peace of nature into the experience of humans? And here, with that certificate, you can work with understanding what is creating the conflict within people and how do you resolve that conflict within them. And then how do you resolve the conflict that inner conflict is creating externally? So, that's why I've created all of these different programs for people to be able to learn so that they can be at that beautiful, as you say, moment, so you can be there in humility to try to help another person when they're suffering, and to be able to offer, the beauty and mystery of these ancient wisdom practices, and in a way that speaks to modern people, and for me, there's nothing more joyful than being able to work here at this intersection. And the intersection is characterized by working in the altered state. And the altered state is the state of mind that is beyond the usual conscious mind experience that we are having. As we're moving in and out of the conscious mind level and experiences we're talking, but usually with people you're in the in a mindset that is looking to build consensus, trying to use logic sequences to create a meeting place, filtering out strong emotion or aspects of experience that might be disorganizing, and really trying to be here solving problems and moving in a linear way to organize reality. That's the usual mind that we're working in, most people are working in. And it's an important state of mind because we are living in a really complex and confusing set of experiences, even beyond all of the, what I think of as insanity that technology is bringing us with AI and disinformation, that is so disorganizing beyond just average technology disorganization in terms of the spirit, So, so you need the conscious mind to try to help you make sense of what's happening. But the big issue with the conscious mind is that it filters things that are disorganizing. And a lot of what is disorganizing for people is, one, the sense of disconnection that they feel from the earth. Two, the trauma that they experience in their everyday lives, being exposed to all of the violence that's in the social media and beyond. Three, the trauma of their own misunderstood experiences in childhood, and not really understanding what is actually traumatic, and not understanding that they are traumatized, and just knowing that they don't feel well. And so they just keep all that aside. But you can't, Einstein said that you can't solve a problem at the level where the problem was created. So you're experiencing the problem on the conscious mind level, but you don't know what it is. You might be drinking too much. You may know you have an eating disorder. You're throwing up every time you eat. Or, you may know that you have an anger problem. Or you may know that you can't maintain a relationship with any kind of consistency. Or you may know that you can't talk to your boss or any kind of authority figure because you have big rage issues that come up with. So, these things, but you don't know where they're coming from. And so in order to know, and you don't even know that they may not be the best way to be. You just think that this is the way that this is the way life is. And you see life through that prism. And in order to be able to see life differently, you need to be able to go beyond the conscious mind and all of the defenses that it has to understanding what is actually going on with you and the kinds of disconnections that you've had that are keeping you from being able to rest in yourself. Yeah. So, there are lots of ways of entering into an altered state of awareness. In Buddhism, you work with meditation. Buddhism, for me, is really a philosophy of the mind. It's a science of the mind. And in order to be able to understand the mind, you have to get the mind to settle. And so the shamatha meditation, the work focusing in a one-pointed way on the breath, is a way to get people to be able to settle within themselves so that they can begin to look at their situation. In shamanism, the altered state there's several different methods of attaining altered states in shamanism. And in Buddhism, there's many more forms of meditation beyond the shamatha. There's vipassana, there's deity meditation. In shamanism, the two main ways of altering the state of awareness with intention. One is through the shamanic journey, where you're listening to you're altering your state of awareness and listening to a repetitive sound like a drum. And that helps you move into a shamanic cosmography that is an inner cosmography that is very similarly described in many different shamanic cultures. Then you have, of course, the work with the plants. And then you have visions that emerge from vision quests. And then you have visions that come unbidden, the way that they did with me. And then you have dreams, where the study of dreams, where you're understanding the world beyond the conscious mind through dreaming. And then you have with hypnotherapy, you have the way of altering the state of awareness is through suggestions for relaxation. That in the way in depth hypnosis, we have these structures that are very precise that guide a person into their own awareness. There's structures that help them know themselves. They're not structures that tell them themselves. They're structures that help evoke their deeper experience. And so then you're working in that altered state of awareness, doing therapeutic processes where you're bringing in different forms of healing. And as the person has altered their state of awareness, they are able to, the first thing we do in all of the healing methodologies that we work with here at the Foundation of the Sacred Stream, the first thing we do is connect them to a source of power, which we will call variously in depth hypnosis, we call this source of power the part of yourself that has only your highest good as its sole intent. In Buddhism, we work with Buddha nature, that part of the self that's only connected to wisdom and compassion in a consistent way. In shamanism, we call this aspect of the self the helping spirit. And in energy medicine, we talk about, kind of pristine energy flows, right? So there's all these different ways of accessing transcendental health depending on what level you're working in. And you're working at a different level depending on the student, depending on what they need and where they need to go. And so wherever you get them connected with this transcendental power in the definitions that have meanings for them, you're not imposing any idea on them. You're offering them opportunities that they choose to connect with this transcendental benevolence. And then with that, once that's established, then they have the internal resources where they can go into these places of disruption. And in depth hypnosis, we work primarily with age regression, past life regression, prenatal regression, to help people move into the places where the experience of the trauma they're experiencing in the symptoms that they come for help with is first or most significantly registered in the person's experience. And then you work there and you bring in, and you may need to bring back a part of the self that has been lost, or bring back power that has been lost, or you may have to remove some kind of energy that's in their system that shouldn't be there, or you may have to have some kind of an exchange of the soul part exchange with someone else whose energy is in your system that shouldn't be there, or where they have your energy in their system and it needs to come back. And so there's lots of different ways of doing these processes. And it's all done within the framework of Buddhism, which is that we are resolving karmic patterns. This can be done. You can dissolve karmic patterns through this type of healing, and you can have a deeper experience of your own deepest Buddha nature. You can move into greater awareness of yourself and of the and of your place in the larger reality. So, and there are different ways to do that, but that's the overarching framework, and that's the same framework that plants will bring in, but they have a different way of working, right?
Yes.
And so, so that's a sort of primer unaltered state and how we work with it.
I wanted to mention, like, when you were talking about opening up the power within the body, one of the states that a shaman, I feel like a planned shaman, would achieve over time is opening up that intelligence that is within you. And that could be seen in many different ways. It could be the voice that guides you, or it could be like the fundamental universe that takes a form in you and start talking. But you would access it. And that the plant is not communicating with you. The plant is communicating with that intelligence, which is much more ancient, primal. And over years, I could understand, because that part of you is the kind of what people try to understand from God, because it's very pure, and it's very intelligent and very sharp. It's not like soft always. It knows what word to use at the right time. So even if other energies come and try to pick on you, when that part of you gets activated, it can deal with it. And all conversation becomes an exchange of knowledge. And even you would be blown away by, like, wow, this part of me did exist. And this has always been there. It's just that sometimes you need to go in the depths of your consciousness to activate. And it might be the same thing you were explaining with hypnosis and going deep into your mind to really activate that primal intelligence that is laying inside you. I would like to ask you, like, you mentioned the word wisdom of the body. What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, the body, I mean, we're kind of used to, again, thinking about our minds. I think, working with conceptual memory and mental concepts. But the body has its own memory. The body has its own experience. The body has its own intelligence, and it's a matter of being able to move again beyond the conscious mind, so that you can begin to listen to the wisdom of your body. And the way we access that wisdom in depth hypnosis is we will try to establish where in the body certain experiences are arising from that may have to do with the symptoms that a person is coming in with. And then we'll follow that physical experience into the energetic level, which will allow us, we have scripts that we use, like, words that we use to help the person drop more deeply into the physical experience and track it through color or temperature or energy into the experience, that the physical sensation is the tip of the iceberg of, that holds the understanding about the roots of the symptoms that the person is dealing with. And then once we're at that place where that first experience or most significant experience that's contributing to the symptoms that the person is experiencing on the surface level, that's where we introduce the different forms of healing that I mentioned. And then we reinforce that with energy, the change with energy and suggestion paralysis.
It makes so much sense. Like, like when you go to ayahuasca or any kind of plant ceremony, the initial part is purging. You need to purge out all the blocks within the body. You need to put out all the chemicals, or like people feel like it has to do with food. It doesn't really have to do with food. It has to do with purifying the body. So even if it's like traumas that has kept your body from not flowing the energy properly, the plant goes in and trickles down and makes you puke it out. So it's a very different way of and I remember, like, I met this very talented shaman long back, and he was saying, even in the beginning, you'll be like, the moment you exhale air out, you burp, or whatever air goes out, it's also an energy going out of your body. So it's just like body keeps memories, and it needs to be put out to kind of free you for that knowledge to come back. We are going a little bit over time. I have a few more questions to you. So now you found the organization that you wanted, and you have studied hypnosis, and you found your own ways to really deep dive into human mind and give healing. What happened after that? Like, you had classes, and what was the journey where you want to go in time?
Well, I'm still there, and, I'm still, I'm still teaching, still seeing people one-on-one. I'm still, developing other healers. I think, I've got a book coming out on depth hypnosis that I've been writing for 20 years that will be out in about 6 weeks, which is exciting. I'm hoping, I think for me, I'm really interested in having as many people who feel drawn to this kind of path receive the training that we have, if they feel resonant with it, so that they can help other people. I mean, that's really kind of where I am. Sometimes I say to my students, we have a hole in the wall right now where we're able to do this deep, profound work and, not get burned at the stake. And it's, we're working, we have this opportunity where we have all of this access to all of this knowledge, and that we can bring it into healing people in the modern context. And it's so important to do at this time, because we are reeling under the weight of this war that has been waged on the human spirit, on the natural world. And we have this opportunity where we can train people to not only order themselves, as you were saying, with, finding their own ethical, moral compass, and, in the process of trying to get to the place where you can help another person, you help yourself, because you have to order yourself in a particular way in order to be able to be fully present with another person in a sphere, and like, so that you're not polluting their experience, that you're able to really be fully present with their experience. Like you were talking about shamans that lose their way, there's a way in which you have to develop yourself so that you can be there to help another person. And so I'm really, really, really interested in being able to find as many people as possible who are interested in doing this, so that they can help more people. Like, that's I'm getting toward the end of my life, and that's the legacy that I want to be able to leave, and